This is the Nintendo Switch. It's known as a hybrid console due to its ability to be played on a TV as well as in handheld mode. In my opinion, the Switch is one of the most innovative and inspiring consoles of this generation, by showing that a handheld system not only can be a great way to game, but that its games don't have to be lesser versions of their bigger titles. But Nintendo also realized that their first iteration of the Switch wasn't perfect, and in knowing this, they decided to release different versions. From smallest to biggest, we have the Lite, the Original, the OLED, and the 2. All of them, in my opinion, serve differing purposes, and not everyone has the same needs or wants. So this leaves us with one question: which one's right for you? You could ask yourself another question: what kind of gamer are you? A casual couch gamer? A handheld commuter? Or a sit down and play for hours kind of gamer? Defining this question will help point you in the right direction, but not understanding all the pros and cons of each system won't get you there efficiently. So I wanted to break down all the great things and all the shortfalls of each variant to help you, the consumer, not under-purchase, or worse, over-purchase. Let's start with the Switch's first iteration, the original. When someone talks about a Nintendo Switch, I would say most people would automatically think of this one. Not because it's the best, but because this is what defines a Switch. It has removable Joy-Cons, it has an IR camera, it has motion controls, and it can be played portably or in docked mode, which just means it can be played on a TV for people that don't know. The removable Joy-Cons can be used as either just a regular controller when slotted into the dog bone. They can be held in each individual hand to utilize the motion controls, or each Joy-Con can be used as an individual controller and shared with a friend or family member to play multiplayer in tabletop mode. On the back of the console, there's a kickstand so that the Switch can sit upright and this 2.6-inch LCD screen can be viewed hands-free. This is a huge positive when it comes to households that have very few TVs. If someone wants to use the TV to, say, watch a show, and someone else wants to play a game, they can simply just attach the Joy-Cons to the side of the console, lift it out of the dock, and now they can play in handheld mode. This being the first iteration of the Switch makes it very easy to find accessories, such as carrying cases, charging docks for your Joy-Cons, and grips like this one from Satisfy. Not a sponsor, but I really like their products, and they actually make a grip for every iteration of the Switch, so go check them out. It seems like the Switch is pretty perfect, but it has its shortfalls as well. I mentioned the 6.2-inch LCD screen a little earlier. It's not bad, but it's not the greatest either. The colors are a little washed out looking, and the shadows are a bit dull, as well as the screen is only good for 720p at 30 frames per second. I'm not saying this is unplayable by any means, but with a later model, this has been updated for a more pleasurable viewing experience. When it comes to battery life, it's not bad. Some games require more energy than others. Nintendo says that the battery life can last anywhere in between 2.5 and 6.5 hours. I would say for most bigger title games, you'd probably get about middle of the range, so we'll say 4 hours. I recently found out that they updated the battery in the original, and not just in the OLED that I previously thought. If you look at the serial number on the bottom of the Switch, if the letters start with XA, then you have the battery that was first released with the Switch. But if the letters start with XK, then you have the updated battery, moving the range of battery life from 4.5 to 9 hours. So definitely look at that if you can. The last negative thing I'll say about the original is that the kickstand on the back it's pretty awful. It's very flimsy, and they put it off to the side for some reason, allowing it to fall over very easily. This was fixed in another iteration, but I'll get into that a little later. Let's move on to a small but mighty version of the Switch, the Switch Lite. Nintendo released this as a more budget-friendly model, meaning it doesn't have all the same features as the original. There are no removable Joy-Cons, no motion controls, no IR camera, and it can't be docked to play on the TV. This might make you think that this is an absolute epic waste of money, but on the contrary, this has benefits that the other ones don't, and the biggest one is its size. The Lite's small dimensions make it very ideal to fit in your pocket or a small bag or purse. This is perfect for someone that commutes a lot. I actually demonstrated this in a video I made about the Switch Lite. Feel free to go watch it after this video. I'll put a link in the description. Since it's smaller than the others, it's the cheapest on this list. So if you're someone that would primarily play in handheld, then you can save some money and go with the cheaper option. Because it's smaller, accessories tend to be cheaper than the other models on this list. I do talk this little guy up quite a bit, mainly because it reminds me of my childhood when I would play Pokemon Red on my Game Boy for hours. But I wouldn't be truthful if I didn't mention the obvious shortcomings of this system. Due to the missing features, it can't play the entire library of games for the Switch. Some games require motion controls and some games require the IR camera. But to be honest, the list of games that it can't play isn't very big. In fact, Nintendo actually abandoned the IR camera near the start and stopped promoting that it even existed. So that's not even really an issue. The Lite may not have motion controls, but it does have a gyro system still, which allows you to physically tilt the console to make fine adjustments with movements or aiming in some games. The lack of dockability can be a bit of a deal breaker, and I really don't blame you. You don't want to have to be relegated to the 5.5-inch screen forever. This also makes for multiplayer gaming difficult. Bluetooth controllers can be paired to the Lite to play in tabletop mode, or if you're connected to the internet, you can play online multiplayer. But those are all your options, unfortunately. One last major flaw with the Lite is all Joy-Cons experience something called stick drift. This is where the joystick on a Joy-Con has experienced many hours of play and has worn out to the point where it can't stay centered on its own anymore. Your character in a game would move on its own without you even touching it. With a Joy-Con, you could do one of two things. Either have it repaired or repair it yourself, or simply just buy a new one. This is what most people end up doing. But the Lite doesn't have removable Joy-Cons, so you would have to take apart the entire console to fix it. This can be difficult since it requires a special screwdriver to take it apart. I'm sure most computer repair shops would do it for you, but it's still inconvenient and annoying. The next model we have is the Switch OLED. This model is going to be compared to the original quite a bit, since the OLED is just the updated version of the original. This, in my opinion, and I would probably be safe to say the majority of other people's opinion, is the best version of the Switch 1 era of consoles. Nintendo upgraded the screen to a 7-inch OLED screen, making portable play a much more pleasurable experience. The color contrasts are much more sharp, and the shadows are much darker, not dull and washed out like the original screen. Playing in tabletop mode is also much better with the updated kickstand. Instead of the off-center flimsy one, you now have this robust one that stretches across the entire console. The speakers were also upgraded for better sound compared to the original. And all OLED models were manufactured with the better battery, so no need to go looking at serial numbers to see if you have the better one. Internal storage was upgraded from 32 gigs to 64 gigs to allow you to download more games to the console. A thing I should mention is that every Switch system comes with a slot for a micro SD card, so internal storage really isn't that big of an issue. Especially if you buy a 1 terabyte micro SD card, then that's plenty of space for lots of games. Most of the upgrades they did to the Switch OLED are mostly for handheld mode, but Nintendo did add a LAN connection to the dock. This allows you to connect to the internet through a cable instead of just relying on Wi-Fi. This is important if you like to play online with friends. This will reduce the chance of dropout or experiencing lag during playing. The Switch OLED is the top Switch 1 model, but it's also the most expensive, sitting at $400, where the original is $340 and the Lite is $230. The biggest letdown I would say for the Switch OLED model is that there were no performance upgrades to the CPU or GPU. It runs at the exact same performance as the original does. Like I said, most of the upgrades were just done for handheld experience. Before I move on to the next Switch model, I'd actually like to end on a positive with the Switch OLED, is that the special editions that came out for the OLED are gorgeous. Nintendo did a fantastic job with these. They actually added artwork to the front of the dock, as well as the Joy-Cons. They would put special designs that were inspired by the game. If you want the most appealing looking Switch for your gaming setup, I would definitely go with any special edition, like the Legend of Zelda or Pokemon ones. Alright, time to move on to our last but definitely not least Switch model, the Switch 2. This is Nintendo's latest model, adding pretty well everything we as fans asked for in a Switch. In handheld mode, we have a 7.9-inch LCD screen producing 1080p graphics at 120 Hz. In docked mode, graphics jump up to 4K at 60 frames per second. If graphics are reduced to 1080p, then frame rates can go as high as 120 frames per second, if your TV will support those frame rates. Processing power has been upgraded so games load much quicker, and frame rates are a lot more stable now. A big question a lot of fans are wondering is this going to be backwards compatible? AKA, will I be able to play my Switch 1 collection, or will it become my new retro collection? It is in fact backwards compatible, so you can play your Switch 1 games on here. The only games it can't play are the ones that require the IR camera, or for this to actually physically fit into something, like with the Nintendo Labo kit. The Switch 2 is considerably bigger than the original. Moving with the disappointments, the Switch 2 does come with some shortcomings of its own. Being the best of the Switch consoles, it comes with the biggest price tag of $450. When a lot of people saw this, they wondered if the graphical upgrade was even worth the huge price tag. This is the most expensive Nintendo console to date. Even with inflation, no other Nintendo console came close to this. Even though it's great having a much bigger screen for handheld play, it also comes with the price of being heavier than the previous models, weighing at 1.18 pounds, compared to the original's 0.88 pounds. It doesn't seem like a lot, but after playing for an hour, your hands will probably be pretty cramped up. With more processing power comes more battery usage. The battery life on the Switch 2 is only good for 2 to 6.5 hours, depending on the demand of the gameplay. People have reported when playing Mario Kart World, they only got around 2 hours of battery life, sometimes less. One thing I actually really love that Nintendo did, since they knew not a lot of games were going to be available at launch, they made upgrade packs for older Switch 1 games, whether it added content or just upgraded the graphics and frame rates. It gave you a chance to relive previous games that you hadn't touched in a while and experience them in a different way. I actually went back and played Breath of the Wild again at 4K 60 frames per second. What a different experience that was. In the end, you just need to ask yourself what your gaming habits are. What's important to you? There are lots of variables that'll steer you in one direction or another. If you're strictly a handheld player, then the Lite might be best for you. If you sometimes play in handheld, but mostly in docked mode, then get the original. If you mostly play in handheld and sometimes in docked mode, then get the OLED. And if power and graphics is what's important to you, then get the Switch 2. There's something for everyone when it comes to Nintendo. One more thing you could ask yourself is, where do you usually play? Who do you like to play with, whether it's a friend or a family member or just by yourself? And how long do you like to play for? These are questions that'll help you narrow down which one is best for you. And don't be afraid to look at used consoles to save a little extra money, but definitely exercise your buyer's judgment. This video is obviously about the Switch family of systems and which one you might like. I understand that the Switch isn't the end-all to be-all, and that there's other consoles much more powerful than this. But Nintendo has been a favorite of mine since I was a kid, and I've clearly built my channel around it. And before I leave you all to your gaming, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome, informative videos like this one. Whether you've been watching me for a while or this is the first time seeing me, thank you so much. I work hard to bring you videos that are entertaining and informative. They may not come out as quickly as I'd like, but I really love making them. And until next time, happy gaming, everyone. Cheers.